Attention! Destruction of the 3 World Trade Center towers in New York City on September 11th, 2001, and a whole lot more. This is 9/11 Freefall. Hi everyone, I'm Andy Steele, back here again for yet another episode of 9/11 Freefall. Week after week, we come back here to the table to lay it all out for you, to bring you the evidence of the biggest injustice in modern American history, and to sound the alarm, the call to the real superheroes of this world to spring into action. When I say superheroes, I don't mean comic books and capes, or people who can fly in the air or lift Buicks over their heads. I'm talking about regular folks. Folks whose only superpower, the only characteristic that sets them apart from everyone else, is their ability to not lie to themselves and to face the truth when it's abundantly clear to them. And I'm talking about the folks who have spoken out. I'm talking about the experts who have told the truth about the destruction of the 3 World Trade Center towers, and the activists like yourselves, the people in this audience listening to me right now, who get their words out to the ears of this suffering American public. Now, if this is your first time listening, the show is about 9/11. It's about 9/11 science and the people and organizations dedicated not only exposing the fact that the Twin Towers and World Trade Center Building 7 were brought down with explosives in a controlled demolition on 9/11, but also grabbing America's destiny by the tail and actually doing something about it. All right, running headfirst into these tin soldiers of the media and government officials that fearfully protect this official lie. All right. Now, one of the leading organizations doing this is Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. All right. It's a nonprofit organization founded by Richard Gage, AIA, back in 2007, and since then they've been tirelessly speaking, publishing, making films about the scientific evidence of controlled demolition on 9/11, and they've been getting stronger and stronger as the American dream fades because of certain current events, and more people are beginning to awaken to reality. They're starting to see what's taking place around them, and their minds are opened, and they're more able to face the truth. Now, let me just say quickly here that the views expressed on the show don't always reflect the views of AE, 9/11 Truth, or any of the organizations we talk about. The show's independent, and this keeps me from having to talk as if I have a lawyer whispering in my ear and consulting me while I do the show. So when I say something or a guest says something like, oh, 9/11 was an inside job, you know it's Andy Steele, or it's Andy Steele's guest speaking individually, not AE 9/11 Truth, because they don't get into theories or blaming anyone for the crime. They're all about the science, and that science is what grounds everything and capitalizes that T in 9/11 Truth. All right? Now, Science Truth, that's what gets the National Institute of Standards and Technology to admit to Building 7's freefall acceleration on 9/11, as they did because of the efforts of David Chandler. We had him as a guest many months ago on this show. All right? The Science Truth is what gets arrogant fools to drop this know-it-all act that they have when they talk, when you talk about Building 7 to them, because they're unable to wave it off except with little nervous statements like, well, that's probably something we don't need to know about. No, it is something we do need to know about. I actually had somebody say that to me, in a debate about 9/11 once. When you bring up Building 7, they wave it off as, oh, yeah, that's something we probably just don't need to know about. Well, no, you can't do that. You don't get a free pass. You don't get to use that wild card in the game and say it's the ace of spades you need to make your hand a royal flush. All right, no, it's something you absolutely need to know about. And the fact is, we already do know about it. It was a classic controlled demolition. You don't even need to go to college to see that. I mean, you can watch the building fall. Now, yeah, obviously you don't want to base your evidence just on one perception, but the evidence is there. The free fall acceleration admitted by NIST that I talked about before. All of the work that's been laid out for you in movies like Blueprint for Truth and David Chandler's experiments, Jonathan Cole's experiments, all of it's there. It's all been proven. We know what it is. We do know about it. All right? Period, sentence, paragraph. The only reason there is any doubt whatsoever right now is because the people in power do everything they can to sweep this under the rug. And the American people, while, some of them pretend to be tough when it comes to playing football or looking cool in the bars or blowing people away with Predator drones from thousands of miles away behind a secure Air Force wall, they're tough there, but when you come to this, they turn into these timid little pixies. When you ask them to openly acknowledge things that might make them temporarily unpopular to the other pixies around them. But that's changing, and that's changing fast. Now, what we're going to do before we get further into the show is what we do every week, is we take about 10 seconds to remember all the people who tragically died on 9/11 and all of the people from the soldiers to the innocent civilians who died in the wars that followed 9/11 too. All right, so we're going to do that right now. Okay, and like we say every week, we do this to keep ourselves focused, but also to keep you focused. You know, we had a discussion last week with Steve Cohn and Mike Figa, and we talked about how as time passes, events like 9/11 become more and more like something that happened in history. And when I say that, I mean, you know, this interpretation people sometimes get that it's something that happened to other people in another world. And how do I explain that? Well, you know, that feeling, you kind of get that feeling when you look at historical events, whatever it is. It could be the Civil War, it could be the JFK assassination, it could be the whole Watergate thing. But, you know, especially these ones that happened before you were born, that it's something separate from you and your own life. You know, because the people all look different, the clothes are different, buildings are different. It's like another universe. You know, something happening in a book. But it's not. It's something people lived, and in some cases it was their last day of life. All right, and it's something the families of the victims continue to live with today. I'm talking about 9/11. And to know we were lied to about it is a punch in the face to all of those victims and to the American people who survived it, who live in the post-9/11 world we constantly hear about. For our government to play games with the facts and to continue to deny them is absolutely criminal. And when the time comes, whoever the perpetrators were will pay for that crime. And so that brings us to the question of the week. What steps beyond education of the public should the 9/11 Truth Movement be taking to bring the perpetrators to justice? What should be done? You know, we talk about pursuing a real investigation, but as Dennis McMahon noted in one of our previous episodes, you know, that's a real general statement. Now, what does a real investigation look like? Is it possible to have one here in the United States? You know, because, you know, look at the corrupted nature of our government and our media. We beat that over the head every week because obviously it's true, and it's one of the biggest impediments to getting justice, to the American people being enlightened of this and being able to move on into future history. Kind of an oxymoron, but into the future of this nation. You know, by putting this to bed, by knowing what really happened on that day. So do we need to go to an international court? You know, someone like me who's personally libertarian-leaning, saying that out loud, or, you know, even thinking it, is kind of like asking an artist to burn an epic masterpiece he's been working on for years. All right, but still, and what do? Justice needs to be done in this horrible injustice that happened that day. It continues to happen, and this is, you know, this goes beyond political leanings of people. But this is the kind of discussion and debate we need to be having and pursuing. Otherwise, we'll be laying on our deathbeds as old men and women talking about Building 7 and how this lie is still being covered up, and all of the people who were behind it, and by that point will be dead and they will have gotten away with their crimes. Kind of like those Nazis that escaped to South America and got to die peacefully in their sleep. All right, that's a terrible injustice in history. Well, we don't want to repeat that in this case. So, again, just to repeat the question, what steps beyond education of the public should the 9/11 Truth Movement be taking to bring the perpetrators to justice? All right? I want this audience to think about it and call in with your response, and if it's good, we'll play it on the air. I forgot to mention the phone number in last week's show. I'm not going to repeat that mistake this week. The phone number is 315-982-6663. That's 315-WTC-6663. You can get a voicemail, but you leave your response there. And again, if it's good, we will play it. But think about this, because this is where our brains need to be. All right, beyond just talking about it, we need to be moving towards something that, you know, that manifests into legal action. Now, I'm going to move on into the news, but the first story is related to this, and this goes along with the question of the week. If you go to 9/11 Blogger, you're going to see there's a video up there of an international conference. It's called 9/11 Revisited, Seeking the Truth. This was in Kuala Lumpur last month, and Richard Gage participated in it, along with former Congresswoman Cynthia McKinney, Professor Graham McQueen, lots of others were there. And the video that's on 9/11 Blogger, I believe, is the third session called 9/11 and War Crimes, a panel discussion and recommendation. There's other sessions that were before it, and this includes one in which Richard Gage gave his presentation of controlled demolition evidence. So you might be able to find that somewhere on YouTube. But in this third session, they talk about what I was just talking about and what our question of the week asks, and that's, what does justice look like in regard to 9/11? All right? How does the 9/11 Truth Movement get organized and turn this movement into a full legal assault on the real criminals behind it? All right, now this is an interesting discussion, and there's a lot of people in the panel weighed in on it, so you need to check that out and hear it. It's about an hour and a half long, but one of the things that comes up is what I talked about, and that's the debate on whether or not it's possible to get justice in the United States, or if this has to go into international hands. I personally still have hope in America and Americans, and there are steps being taken to awaken authorities on a massive scale within the U.S. that I'll discuss in future episodes. But if you're a patriotic American and you're aware of the controlled demolition evidence and you're worried about us seeking justice outside of America, then you need to check yourself. You need to look in that mirror and ask yourself, what are you doing to get justice within America? All right, who are you talking to at the grassroots? What ideas are you contributing to this movement? Or are you just sitting back and letting Richard Gage do it? Are you just sitting back and letting AE 9/11 Truth do it? Or your favorite radio host? Or me? I mean, whoever. Are you actually part of it? If you're part of the choir, are you singing? I'll bring back the last week's question again this week, okay? Because, it all does rely on you. You have a tremendous responsibility being awake, and if you want to see something happen with the United States, you need to make it happen. So check that out at 9/11 Blogger. The next story is also at 9/11 Blogger. The title is Insurance Companies for American and United Airlines Notified About Controlled Demolition Evidence. This is the kind of action I'm talking about. All right, we got a great volunteer for AE 9/11 Truth, Mark Graham. What he did is he sent a letter to the 12 insurance companies for the airline defendants sued by Larry Silverstein. Now, I'm reading verbatim from the article. Sued by Larry Silverstein, informing them about evidence of controlled demolition of the Twin Towers and Building 7, and offering to put them in touch with building experts who could provide expert testimony. Now, just give some background in this article. In 2004, Larry Silverstein, who owned Building 7 and had signed a 99-year lease on the Twin Towers just 6 weeks before 9/11, sued United and American Airlines and companies providing security at the airports. Silverstein claimed that the airline defendants had been negligent in allowing the hijackers to board and hijack the planes and fly them into the Twin Towers. All right, he claimed that the plane crashes and fires approximately caused the total destruction of the Twin Towers, Building 7, and other buildings in the World Trade Center. No mention has been made of the fact that it would have been impossible for those plane crashes and fires to have destroyed the buildings or the abundant evidence of controlled demolition. The defense attorneys could make an affirmative defense of this argument and exculpatory evidence. Graham sent his letter via certified mail to the heads of 12 insurance companies who insured the airline defendants, including Lloyd's of America, Travelers, Swiss Re, Zurich American, Global Aerospace, and U.S. Aircraft Insurance Group, and to their attorneys. Great job, Mark. We ought to get you on the air to talk about your efforts here. But this is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. All right, these are the kind of actions that are going to make the truth come to light. And Mark's finding common ground here with these insurance companies taking a hit because of this false flag event, and he's letting them know essentially that they're the victims of insurance fraud. All right, like if somebody burns down their own business or their house and then takes a check from the insurance company, well, they're committing a crime. And if the insurance company finds out about it, then they're going to get their money back and send that person right to jail. So the beauty of this is that it doesn't even get into accusing any party, such as Larry Silverstein, though he would need to answer for this, but just focuses on the fact that the airplanes did not cause the total destruction of the Twin Towers or Building 7. And you want to appeal to powerful people, you appeal to their wallets, and this is the way to do it. Great job again, Mark. So we're going to get to our guest here now. Without any further ado, Rick Shattuck is his name, and he's a 9/11 Truth activist, and he's the webmaster of several 9/11 Truth-related sites, even webmastering sites for other prominent 9/11 Truth experts like Niels Harrod and Mark Basile. Currently he is working on a PhD in education research project to see if there's a correlation between critical thinking ability and scores on a survey about quote-unquote truther-related topics. Now, I can't wait to hear more about that. He's also a member of Mensa. I guess he was also a defense contractor in D.C. Try to implore him to talk a little bit more about that. And he's also helping Mark Basile, who we're working to get here on the show sometime in the future, in an effort that Rick will be talking about in detail today. His main website is www.shaddockresearch.org. It's www.shaddockresearch.org, and it provides links to all of his other sites, so you need to check that out. Rick, welcome to 9/11 Freefall.
Okay, thanks a lot, Andrew. That's a great question to ask, what is needed, and scientific research is something that we really need to be taken seriously by the scientific community, and to get a new investigation going and a prosecution. So I was thinking of things that I could do, and one is to make websites, because I have a web hosting company, and I've made several sites that you mentioned. One is Association of 9/11 Truth Activists, ANETA.org. So if you're not an architect or engineer or pilot or firefighter, you can join this. And I've found that helpful when I give a presentation at a public library, for example, where if you want to use the room for free, they asked, is this with a nonprofit organization? So people out there could join this. It's free, and you could cite Association of 9/11 Truth Activists. And I've enjoyed putting on some shows, for example, on the anniversary of 9/11, and showing video, the experts speak out from architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth. And a new movie that's out, Operation Terror, by Art Olivier. If you've seen that movie, have you seen it?
I have not seen it yet. I've been meaning to get it on DVD and watch it, but I have heard about it, yes.
Yeah, it's great. It's semi-fictional, because it's relying on a number of events that happen on 9/11, which are underreported. For example, when the BBC announcer started to talk about Building 7 being down already, and it's behind her on the camera. And, it's an exciting documentary, so people will not listen to a lot of technical discussion. Many people will watch a dramatic movie to show how 9/11 may have been organized. And for one thing, it shows that it did not need to be 10,000 people. Some people will object to 9/11 Truth and say, 10,000 people would have to be in on it. No, the movie shows clearly that it could be done with about 20, a core group of about 20 people who are truly in on it, and everybody else is just doing their job or thought it was a drill. So I've given some presentations like that. So that's what aneta.org is about.
Now, Rick, I just want to ask you really quick, because we always ask our guests this at the beginning to kind of set the origin story, for lack of a better word. Tell us about yourself. How did you wake up to the reality of 9/11, and what made you make this decision to act upon it and do all of what you're describing right now?
Well, I've been working in Washington, D.C. as a computer consultant and contractor, and I've enjoyed teaching over 1,000 people at the Pentagon in software such as Microsoft Excel, and at the Naval Air Test Center, and I've done programming at the National Security Agency. So it's an exciting environment in Washington, D.C., and felt very patriotic in addition to making a living. I was working with a company around 2003 that was selling computers bound for Iraq and Afghanistan to be fitted with Tempest shielding. And, we all enjoyed the feeling of helping our country. And then about 2005, YouTube came out, became popular, and I saw the video Loose Change, and it was quite a wake-up call that this is all really based on a fraud. So I did not feel so good about what I was doing, and did more research and looking at more videos and evidence that this was all a false flag operation, and decided to get involved and help to build awareness. So it took me a while, probably a couple of years, to really come to the conclusion that this was really a false flag operation. I've made some videos, for example, on another website, truthmakespeace.com. Lies make war, truth makes peace. And on that website are some experiments that you can do, even at home, to test the official conspiracy theory. So one of those, a simple one, is taking a steel pan, putting it on a stove, and under flame, and see if it loses its strength significantly. And it doesn't. Or putting a steel bar in a fireplace, keeping it there for a while, see if it weakens. It doesn't. So I've made some videos, partially in fun, because 9/11 is kind of a downer topic for many people. So trying to make it a little bit humorous, so people will watch it and get the message that we don't have to rely on a super sophisticated laboratory to disprove some of the claims of the official 9/11 Commission. David Ray Griffin, in one of the videos, when he's talking about the pulverization of concrete, says, try this. Take a concrete block and drop it from many stories and see if it pulverizes. So I decided to do that. So in my condo building, I dropped one out of the balcony, being careful not to hit anybody. And I had a friend of mine watch and make sure that nobody was coming, especially the condo manager, and took a video of that. And indeed, the concrete block that I bought at Home Depot did not pulverize into dust. It cracked into large chunks. So those are some of the things I've done on my videos at truthmakespeace.com.
Well, it's funny, and I've watched some of those videos, and we'll get the link up on 911freefall.com so people can watch those. I just want to jump back to what you were saying though, and your story about how you woke up. Now, you're somebody that was actually in what's called the military-industrial complex, in terms of your business was for these departments that were waging war. You were making your money in the war of terror that followed 9/11, and you woke up to 9/11, and you essentially, you walked away from that to tell the truth. I think that's amazing that you did that, and I think that's something that should be commended. It's a very hard decision, I bet, to have made.
Well, thank you. Was in the Marines for 2 years and took the oath to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And I see the 9/11 Truth Movement as a way that I can really support the country and help to get our democracy back, because our Constitution has been diluted since 9/11, for the cause of the so-called war on terror. And I have, some friends who are, still working in the industry, and I see that it's hard for them to admit that they're working for part of a big fraud. And, it's kind of sad. But
what is their attitude? I don't mean to interrupt you, but what is their attitude? Because you say that they're awake to it, or are they fully awake, or do they suspect something? What's the general feeling you get from your former colleagues about the evidence of 9/11, and what they're contributing to the post 9/11 world, that resulted from it?
Mm-hmm. Well, I still work with with them. And, I focus on organizations that are more peaceful, associations, doing database programming for them, data conversions, and doctors are now getting computerized. So I enjoy that, working with people who are dedicated towards helping people's health rather than organizations that ultimately are dedicated to increasing our ability to kill people, and their mentality is in a more altruistic direction. So it feels good to work for those type of clients and to help with 9/11 Truth. And the people who are still in the military-industrial complex or intelligent community, they have their mortgages to pay and their families to feed. They're just doing what they can, and to varying degrees, some are more receptive to 9/11 Truth, and one in particular is still very much against it. I've been debating him for years, but I think he suspects something is on. Otherwise, he wouldn't be continuing to email me about 9/11.
Well, it's all about planting seeds with some people if you can't wake them up, and some people may even know the truth deep down subconsciously, but it's almost like a woman who knows that her husband's cheating on her. She may deny it and keep on denying it until something big makes her snap and come forward. So it's good that you've done what you're doing, and it's a lesson to the people out there listening that no effort is wasted. We said it in last week's show. The only way you strike out with 9/11 Truth is if you don't swing, all right? If you swing for that homer each time, you're going to do something, whether you get the homer or something else, or whether you just plant the seeds in people's minds. So that, yeah, absolutely. I just want to agree with you on that. Now, you wanted to come on the show, and I want to make sure that we get plenty of time to talk about it. You wanted to come on the show because you wanted to talk about an effort that Mark Basile is doing and what you're doing to try to help him with that. So give us the background on it and what it is and what our listeners can do to help.
Yeah, well, it was along the lines of what you were saying. Is we may be asking, why don't they do more scientific research? Why don't they get a new investigation going? And I realized that I am part of they, so I should do something. And I contacted Mark Basile because I had seen his videos on Expert Speak Out, and he was talking about the experiments he did. Those are great. We should get it on paper. And that's what people have been clamoring for. In particular, the friend that I was mentioning, he said, well, if there really was something to 9/11 Truth, there would be scientific research studies published. And Chris Moore has said that also, who was on the James Randi forum, and very popular on the James Randi forum because he's opposing 9/11 Truth. But he is kind of holding our feet to the fire, and I've found that Chris Moore is very courteous, unlike some people on the James Randi forum. And he had made a video about 238 points debating Richard Gage. And so we put that on the web and have been refuting them one by one with the help of John Michael Talbot and Adam Taylor and Chris Sarnes, and with periodic feedback from Richard Gage, who, of course, is very busy traveling around the country. And one of the points that Chris mentioned is that there should be more scientific research. So I agree, and Mark Basile has very gracefully agreed to try to get his work published in a peer-reviewed journal, and to submit in this new study World Trade Center dust to an independent lab. And this time the lab is not going to know anything about where the dust came from. They're just going to think, well, it's some dust from, some house fire or something somewhere. And that way we would remove any accusation of bias. But unfortunately, although the Bentham study done by Dr. Niels Harrit, and his study is always visible at nielsharrit.org, and it's nielsharrit.org, along with his very impressive credentials. He's a very modest man, so I asked him if it was okay if I put his curriculum vitae on there, his resume, and he has 50 studies and very prestigious, very tough journals. And so we did the study, and Dr. Stephen Jones and Dr. Farrer and the others who were involved in the study but they've been accused of bias because they're all so-called truthers and that they did the experiment. So a common objection to the study is that it could have been biased. And then there was another study. Actually, Chris Moore spearheaded this, and I contributed to it as well. Chris was very polite, even though he's kind of on the, quote, other side. And Dr. Millett studied the dust. However, there's some key experiments, according to Kevin Ryan and others, that he did not do. And there's a possibility that Dr. Millett was biased since he had worked for a study for the EPA on 9/11, on the dust. So we need a study that can be clear of even an accusation of bias. So what Mark Basile will do, will take the dust and just give it, choose a lab that's just technically capable of doing it. And we'll maybe work out the protocols, perhaps randomly select the lab or something like that from a list that is of labs that are qualified, and do everything possible to make this a study that could be accepted by everyone on both sides, because it's done in a purely scientific way and with guards against the possibility of bias, and get that published. So there's a fundraiser that we're doing. Mark Basile has said that from the labs that he has contacted, they usually charge about $5,000 for these type of experiments. So there's a fundraiser for that at markbasile.org, MarkBasile.org.
And I'm actually looking at markbasile.org right now, and there's a little thermometer. How much money are they trying to raise? $5,000? You said that's the goal. That's
right.
Okay.
Yeah, and all the expenses will be fully listed, and we list. If you click there, you can see who's donated already. Some people may wish to be anonymous and some people not. So as a kind of a compromise, we put the first name and the last initial and the amount that they've donated. So you'll be able to see people will be able to see their donations show up within the day.
All right. So if you go to to the audience, if you go to markbasile.org, you're going to see that it's got a little thermometer, and any little bit you contribute helps. Okay, and you can see that because unfortunately, this testing, it costs money. It's not something that you can just whip up in a garage. It can be a truly independent study. And this is not to say that the first nanothermite paper was biased. It's that the opposition is claiming that it is, because they're grasping at straws, and they're trying to their main goal is to discredit, not even really to refute, but to discredit. And so this is basically another way of making them shut their mouths. All right, so if you want to be part of this, you go to markbasile.org and just contribute, whether it be $5, $10, $20, all right, whatever you can give. And this way we'll have a truly independent analysis that stops the opposition dead in their tracks. All right, we'll have a link to that up on 911freefall.com. Did you have something to add, Rick?
Yeah, this will be a more thorough test as well. The one that Chris Moore organized with Dr. James Millett, I believe that was about 2000. And James there are more experiments that Dr. Millett could have done. And as I understand, he's still working on the actual paper, and has not yet been published. But another effort that's going on is the refutation of what Dr. Millett has done, which is the scientific process. They publish a paper, and then other people, usually PhDs, will respond about what they see as drawbacks in the study. One was that although Dr. Millett did identify iron, he did not mention the microspheres, which would only be possible if steel heats up to a super high temperature that it becomes like vapor and forms into spheres as water would, as steam would. So and all the expenses will be fully disclosed as the experiment starts to go and we get more information back from Mark Basile. And he's going to kind of try to stay out of it as much as possible, because people will Well, people will grasp at straws, as you said. Accuse him of somehow influencing it. So probably his secretary will actually take the samples, say nothing to the lab technicians, just here, tell us what's in it. Boom.
And that's the way to do it, and that's actually what the next step needs to be. And to the audience, it's the Christmas season. You've got all these charities, asking you for money. You have no idea where that money goes to. But in this case, this goes, where this is going to. They're fully accountable, and it's going towards getting your country back.
Mm-hmm.
Doing the work that the 9/11 Commission should have been doing. American citizens doing the work that their representatives supposedly should have been doing. So if you want to donate money anywhere, donate it here, because this is going to help not just one group of people. This is going to help every American. So markbasile.org. Now, Rick, switching gears here a little bit, because you have a lot of interesting stuff on your website. There's so many websites I couldn't even look at them all. There's so many there. But something that I found very interesting. You talk about your work with critical thinking, and I see you got a website dedicated to that, along with a test visitors can take, and you're doing your research project as well. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. This is also along the lines of scientific research, which is the way to get 9/11 truth really established in the scientific community. And, congressmen and senators, they listen to scientists. They look for published scientific studies. And so I'm also working on a study which expands upon what I did with my master's degree, which was the study to see if there was a correlation between critical thinking, a test of open-mindedness, and EEG brainwave coherence. And I did this study at a university which includes the transcendental meditation technique as one of the courses that the students take. And it found that students who were freshmen were about the same as freshmen elsewhere, but the seniors were in the 85th percentile as compared to other seniors at other universities where this test had been given. It's called the Watson-Glaser Critical Thinking Appraisal, and pretty much the standard in the industry. It's used often to assess management potential if a person could be a good manager and critical thinker. And critical thinking has been identified as a top educational outcome that universities and schools strive to achieve in their students. The other part was a test of open-mindedness using the Rokeach Adult Dogmatism Scale, developed by Dr. Milton Rokeach, who specialized in the study of dogmatism versus open-mindedness at the University of Michigan. So it's a questionnaire that students answer, and the result would indicate whether they were open-minded or closed-minded. And the other test is EEG brainwave coherence, which is a measure of the orderliness of the electrical activity in the left and right cerebral hemispheres. And how that relates to the university, the TM technique. During meditation, one experiences a state of deep relaxation, and the brainwaves go into a coherent state with regular practice. So I thought I'd continue on this with going for a PhD in education and include an additional test to test if someone is, how can we quantify if someone's a, quote, truther or not? And I discussed this with Dr. James Fetzer on his show last week, who is a noted author and expert in critical thinking and 9/11 truth and the JFK assassination, just an amazing number of publications. And this scale is still in progress, but it would be a test such as questions that people would either strongly disagree, neutral, agree, or strongly agree. The subject would answer one of those. So one question, one statement would be, the official government accounts are usually accurate and trustworthy. Do you strongly agree, disagree, neutral, agree, or strongly agree? So what would you say, Andrew?
Well, I would strongly, whether or not they're accurate, no, I would strongly disagree. Usually they're not.
I thought you would answer that. Yeah, so there'll be questions like that. And so depending on the age of the student, they may, or the test taker, they may or may not remember the Vietnam War or Lee Harvey Oswald. Another potential question could be, Lee Harvey Oswald planned the killing of John F. Kennedy as a lone gunman. And ask if people strongly disagree, neutral, or agree, or strongly agree. And then the idea is to take the results of this survey and see if there's a correlation between critical thinking ability, and which includes subtests of inference and deduction, ability to recognize unwarranted assumptions, and evaluation of arguments. So it tests a person's ability to do those and see if people who are truthers are or are not better at critical thinking. And also to see if there's a correlation between the test of open-mindedness versus dogmatism. Are people who are truthers, they tend to be more open-minded, or are they dogmatic? So we'll see how the test results come out.
So you're taking a group of people that are established 9/11 truthers, or and they'll come out and say, yeah, I think it was an inside job, or I think the buildings were a controlled demolition, and you use them compared to another a control group of people that don't necessarily believe that. Am I correct?
Well, I'll have no way of knowing until the person takes the survey. So I'll be giving it to a randomly selected population, and
I see.
And then we'll see how the test scores come out. I have a home in Washington D.C., but also in Fairfield, Iowa, where this particular university is. They also test the students on their brainwave coherence. So as each year they go into a laboratory and they put some measurement devices on there. It's kind of a little hat that you can wear, and measure the brainwaves and see if there's a correlation between brainwave coherence as well. So is there a physiological correlation between being a truther? Are truther brainwaves more coherent? And are they more logical thinkers, critical thinkers? Are they more open-minded? So, I'm excited about doing these studies. And
now you mentioned on your website, so one of your websites, I don't remember which one, but how to improve critical thinking in students. Because again, if it was just that people are born prone to certain kinds of information, then we would have to give up what we're doing. Obviously, we want to improve the critical thinking of people and have them come over. So, can you talk about improving it, not just in students,
Absolutely.
but in the general public? How do we as a movement do that?
Yeah, absolutely. This is something that has been asked by many educators. For example, John Dewey in 1916, educational psychologist, wrote in Democracy and Education, about the importance of developing a critical thinking ability and open-mindedness, and that our democracy really depends on this. And so one is, practice and instruction in critical thinking, the ability and understanding the different fallacies, like ad hominem and arguments, going to the man, and also instruction on the logical syllogisms, if A, then B, if B, then C, then if A, then C. So instruction is one thing. Also, deep rest is what my study found, is that if during meditation one is integrating their mental activity, their brainwave activity, that helps to promote open-minded, critical thinking and open-mindedness. Also, good food and eating healthily, avoiding. Although we need to do more studies on this, it seems logical that improving the person's physiological health will improve their brain functioning. We should be careful about genetically modified foods and a lot of junk foods that people are eating nowadays, which some feel is an effort to dumb down America and make us more gullible and susceptible to these official conspiracy theories to the point where on live TV we can see 3,000 people being killed, and we're told that it's just by fire, and we see a controlled demolition. Now, I got to admit, I didn't know what to think, so I believed the mainstream media for a while, as I mentioned, until about 2005. And another story that the public's expected to believe is that after they captured the number one terrorist, that they dumped his body in the ocean. So, and people believe that. So I'm concerned about the critical thinking ability of America.
Well, and don't even get me started on the bin Laden. Yeah. I don't talk about it on this show because we just focus on 9/11. Yeah. But anyone who wants to read my writing on that can just Google Andrew Steele and bin Laden, and you can get an eyeful, I guess, since you're reading it. But how do you combat all of this? Because it seems like the cards are stacked against the American public with the brainless media, with like you mentioned, the food, all of these things that I believe that that everything is, that you see, the way the news is presented to you and information is orchestrated to make you swallow an agenda and shut up. That's basically the message that you get. That's the message you got after 9/11 is, shut up or more people will die. The terrorists were the people, on the TV telling you this, trying to scare you into surrendering your rights and going along with the agenda. So, how do we improve the critical thinking of the public when the public has been engineered and it has all of these obstacles in their way to try to inhibit their critical thinking? How do we as a movement kind of break through all of that?
Well, one is exactly what you're doing, having this show and encouraging other people to speak out and educate the public. And also to improve their receptivity, there's research that has shown that meditation helps to open people's minds and to make them more logical in their thinking and have improved ability to recognize unwarranted assumptions. So I'm confident that we are making headway, and I find a big difference in the populations between Washington D.C. and my home in Iowa, where it's a town where a lot of people meditate, and they all get it that 9/11 was an inside job, and that the people in D.C., many of whom depend directly or indirectly on large government, large military. So even a food store owner, will sell to a hair cutter who cuts the hair of a government employee who benefits from big government and may work for the Department of Homeland Security or something like that. So if people have a direct or indirect economic benefit from the official story of 9/11, they're going to be harder to convince. But I see people waking up, and I'm confident we are going to win, and that the truth always triumphs. It's Sanskrit saying, Satyam eva jayate. The truth always triumphs in the end. And we have the truth on our side. We just need to keep speaking out in different ways, through scientific research, getting in the journals, and people can volunteer for such organizations as Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. I enjoy that. There's a weekly conference call. It's a pleasure to talk to other people who get it, who understand the importance of bringing out what happened on 9/11 and getting justice, getting another investigation, getting prosecutions to what we all witnessed, a huge mass murder on live TV. And if we don't stop them now, they'll do it again. Many feel that what happened to John F. Kennedy was a murder, right on live TV in front of everybody, and then we're given some official story that we're expected to believe. So we need to stop it now before it gets even worse.
Absolutely, and I guess you guys have a pretty good 9/11 Truth Society over in Fairfield, Iowa, and on your website you tell visitors to use their activities as a model for organizing a group in their areas. Mm-hmm. So tell us about, what do they do and some successes you've had, and how does someone else, some other place in the country build a group like that?
Yeah, and it's been fun. We get together and we have some refreshments and some organic juice there and things to eat, and show a video about architects, usually from architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth, and but kind of split it up a bit. Listening to, although they're very impressive, expert after expert after expert saying similar things, it could get a little tedious. So I break it up a little bit with I enjoyed, as I mentioned, showing Operation Terror, and he would be a great guest too. Art Olivier, who I found is a very, very good guy to talk to. He's also talked on Alex Jones, and he has talked on the James Fetzer Real Deal show. He did a lot of research before making the movie, and he's put in some very interesting episodes that are not all in the mainstream media. You kind of cover it up, such as when they invaded the Orion Scientific Systems company to confiscate all the information about Able Danger.
No, I got a quick question here, though. In terms of like what kind of community outreach do you guys do? Do you guys go out and hand out pamphlets or anything like that?
Yeah. Some we have at fairs. We have a booth to have buttons and bumper stickers and little DVDs. I like the little pocket DVDs that Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth has, and I always carry some with me and just give them out to people. I can just put it right in my shirt pocket.
Now, how do you get all those people together, though? I mean, because I sometimes it can be people get nervous talking to others, or do you guys put out an ad on Craigslist? How do you get all those people, 9/11 Truth awakened people together in one spot?
Oh, it's on Facebook actually helps a lot, and an ad in a local paper. And I look forward to doing I'm presently in my Iowa home, and I'm going to be going to Washington, D.C., and plan on organizing some events there. And, we have an email list, and when people show up to the meeting, we pass around a sheet if people are not already on the email list to keep posted on current events.
Very good. And, this is the kind of stuff that people need to be doing, and it's no different than any other kind of issue, except that this is the most important issue. Mm-hmm. And this is the kind of issue that people need to be getting together and talking about. I gave a little lecture on the air a few weeks ago about, the abolitionists and what they went through, and the kind mm-hmm. of stuff that they did, and comparisons between that and our current movement. And this is how it started. And, with the abolitionist movement, a lot of it started in churches, okay? So that's one mm-hmm. avenue if someone is of a religious bent where they can get together and talk about this. Or, in other kinds of organizations that they might be a part of where people talk about social issues, might talk about, the politics, the local politics, because you can even talk about this in your town hall if you're a listener, because, everything trickles down, everything affects us here in America, from this event, from 9/11. 9/11 affected everybody, it affects the whole world, really. Yeah. So anything you're doing, anywhere you can speak out. Rick, I want to thank you for coming on the show. Again, you came on here to tell us about what Mark Basile's effort, and to the audience, you can go to markbasile.org and donate. Any little bit you want to give helps. I mean, obviously, they need to get $5,000. You may not have $5,000 to hand to them, but you can give $20, $10, $5, whatever it takes. But know that you're a part of history and part of this tremendous movement. Well, we are out of time on the show again. One more time, I want to thank you, Rick, for coming on. Remember, folks, you can listen to 9/11 Freefall every week at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 o'clock Eastern. Tell your friends about it. Embed it in your blogs. You can go to 911freefall.com to listen to our archives. Well, for Bernie Suarez, who's still on vacation, this is Andy Steele saying goodbye, and we will talk to you next week.
as clear as the evidence is for the destruction of Building 7 by explosives, the evidence is even more clear in the case of the Twin Towers. When you look at it with a new pair of glasses and looking at the forensic science-based evidence. Does it look like a gravitational collapse to you? What about those floors, those pancakes? This is a pancake collapse. We're looking for some pancakes down at the loaf. But what I'm looking for is 110 floors with this kind of metal decking underneath 4 and 5 inches thick of concrete. An acre in size, each of them. 110 acres of these. How many floors do we find down at the bottom? Not 50, not 10, not even 1. We don't even find metal decking down there, or concrete. There's hardly any macroscopic chunks of concrete. What happened to the metal decking? What happened to the concrete? And this dust made it almost across to New Jersey, across the river. Thick, billowing, laying a carpet of 4 or 6 inches thick around lower Manhattan, pulverized to 100 micron to 10 mil particles, almost like talcum powder, some of it. It's very, very fine. Where's the grinder that produced this? 90,000 tons of it. In these clouds that expanded 10 times the volume of the buildings themselves in just 30 seconds. Now, the available gravitational potential in the whole building is about 110,000 kilowatt hours. That's basically the weight of the building times its height above the ground, evened out. But the expansion of these clouds has been calculated to require about 10 times that energy in heat, which produces that expansion. So we have a problem here. 700 bone fragments, a half an inch long, found on top of the skyscraper across the street. Think about that one. There were 2,749 victims, but only 300 whole bodies were found. 20,000 pieces of bodies found. 6,000 small enough to fit into a test tube. 1,100 victims completely unaccounted for. In other words, no pieces large enough to gain any DNA from, vaporized. 200 pieces were matched to one single person. Can fire and a gravitational collapse account for this massive pulverization of people? Architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth are at the apex of the 9/11 Truth movement. Why? Because we have those who have the necessary credibility to raise eyebrows and gain attention. We need to act. The power of truth is greater than the power of the lie. So get informed and begin to let the truth speak through you.